Azza, thank you so much for talking to us today.
My pleasure.
What, and from your perspective, is the key security challenge to leadership in the world today?
It's the key security challenge is that we don't have leadership in the world today. We have leaders in positions of authority, but being in a position of authority does not qualify for leadership that is needed. We need an interconnected, interdependent leadership that is brave, courageous enough to understand that taking risks together is the way to save a planet that is demanding that we understand the interconnectedness of our existence. And it's not just to each other as human beings, but it is to nature, to other living creatures. That awareness and the courage to do what it takes to keep us interconnected, which means not self-interested, which means not concerned about our own unique set of force or access thereto, that kind of leadership is absent in our world today.
It's a very complex situation which you're painting, of course, but in a hopeful scenario and from a people's perspective, what do you think needs to happen?
What is actually happening right now, which is we're seeing how communities are connecting with each other across transnational boundaries much more than we were seeing in the last 2 decades. We're going perhaps back to the solidarity era, or we should be going back to a solidarity era that we saw in the late 50s, 60s, 70s, which went out of fashion for some reason. And I think we're slowly trying to see how and seeing how some of these transnational community-based interactions are, you're seeing cities more connected with each other. You're seeing an awareness of the rural as just as critical and foundational for our well-being as the urban, because we focused for a very long time on the urban. We're seeing resistance to status quo that is proving deeply harmful, politically, legally, and whatever. We're seeing a call for international law that is being espoused by community-based actors around the world. And I think that's what we need, because our current leadership and our current institutions have become either defunct or are not able to perform enough, or frankly just co-opted by the self-interested leaders that they have. So there's a fragmentation at the global and national level of existing institutions and their leaders. At the local level, I think we're seeing more attempts to try to fill in the gap of general welfare seeking for each other. We're seeing that happen at the community level a lot more.
Who do you think could support these important engagements so that they become more permanent and can really drive that change?
I think we're all living through a moment of tremendous insecurity right now, where the existing institutions and methods of engagement, whether they are political parties, unions, political institutions in general, governmental, intergovernmental, they're not functioning as they could be, as they should be. And I think a tremendous amount of the responsibility is falling to the younger generation of leaders, the different kinds of leadership that we hope will become more mainstream, more empowered. But I think we're at this very tipping point of not quite knowing what a new generation of leaders would look like, how they would behave, what kind of institutional mechanisms, if any, they will use and adopt. We don't actually have, for the first time in our collective history, we don't have a record that we could rely on of previous forms of doing things. We're actually at that moment where the existing forms aren't really functioning very well, and we honestly don't know what the alternatives could be or should be. Why it's working at the community level is because they're less beholden to traditional institutional formats, traditional forms of working together. They're less beholden, they can be more creative, more innovative, but they're then more focused on the specific issue and communities that they are with and in, which is different from then trying to take it to regional and to global and seeing how that functions. The regional and global is stuck, truly stuck in every sense. So part of the reason why the so-called Arab Spring was actually indicative not just of what's going on in the Arab region, but indicative of all of us. And it came at a time, is that it happened at a time when there are no blueprints for what you are going to do once you overthrow a regime that is dysfunctional. There was no blueprint for that. We thought, okay, political parties, let's do new political parties. But obviously that's dysfunctional too. They're dysfunctional too. All right, different kinds of community-based movements. What do those look like? If they're not religious, which is the original community-based movement, if they're not religious, what should they look like? We did not have those answers or parameters. We didn't have examples we could go back to in our collective global shared history that we could use from. And I think that was part of why the Arab Spring became what it is today, which is the re-emergence of extraordinarily autocratic, authoritarian, the re-emergence of police and army as key. That isn't what the whole idea was. But honestly, what we see happening in the Arab region, in the Middle East in general today, with what's going on, also very specifically in Palestinian context vis-a-vis Israelis, is an indication of what isn't working globally, of the failures of the existing institutions and mechanisms to take up their responsibilities and deliver them according to the old social contracts that we had.
What gives you hope?
Younger people. Younger people give me tremendous hope. I think they're the only source of hope, to be honest. And now, they are as bifurcated and as different and as divided as the rest of us, but there's something there that is less tired, less grieved and aggrieved by generations of struggle. There's creativity, innovation, hope, persistence in them, sometimes stubbornness too, and they're both the same things actually. It is like the new grass that grows or the new buds in the trees.